Hello, and welcome to that episode of Todd Talks, and Todd Talks people listen. Ah, ah, Hopefully. Today, we are going to be talking about my prediction for the upcoming death battle between Ganondorf and Dracula. A matchup I didn't know I wanted until I saw the preview. It's going to be good. And not just that, but this is a first for Death Battle. They are using, I believe it's called iSource Filmmaker, which is it's been used for video games and it's another engine entirely. And it was like iSource, iFilm, something like that. And they had, if you remember DBX, the recent season, there was a matchup, Diva versus Trombone, sorry, and should be Trombone. But that matchup was made in this engine, and the guy who led that one is leading this one with another team of dedicated iSource filmmakers to make this battle. So this is not using the Unreal Engine. This is an entirely different engine, and based on what we're seeing, it's gonna look freaking awesome. So, and then this is another highly requested matchup, one of the two for Ganondorf. We already saw the first one, which was Ganon versus Bowser in Season 3, which was pretty good. It was a really good matchup. And now we're going to see him versus Dracula. So, let's get this started. Let me tell you a story. Long, long ago, before Hyrule was even a place, there was a demon lord known as Demise. And he wasn't just a demon lord, he was the literal embodiment of all evil. Demise tried to destroy the world and consume all of it in darkness. But a descendant of the goddess Hylia and the hero that was destined to save us all came together and defeated Demise. But before he could be fully defeated, he put a curse on the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero, stating that every time they arrived on this world of Hyrule or beyond, that they would be challenged by an embodiment of his rage and will, and thus was born an entity known as Ganondorf. Now, the most typical form of Ganondorf is that he was a member of the Gerudo tribe, the only male to be born every 100 years, or every lifetime. And as he grew up and grew into power with the Gerudo and even being taught magic by the Twin Rover Witches, he decided that the kingdom of Hyrule had so much and the Gerudo had so little that this could not stand. He decided to take everything for himself. And so in every timeline he is in, he set out on a quest to make it all his own. And he did so multiple times. Part of which was that in the kingdom of Hyrule, there was a thing called the Triforce, an entity created by the three goddesses Din, Nehru, and Freore, and whoever should be able to wield this incredible power will have their wish fulfilled. But upon touching the Triforce, as you might know, he only got one piece, the Triforce of Power. Unfortunately, for us, that was actually kind of a blessing in disguise, because while he didn't get his wish fulfilled, he got the power needed to do just about anything he wanted. He was already a master, a magician, and sorcerer, but because of the Triforce of Power, he now had unlimited magical energy. He was now immortal. He was now immune to many kinds of weapons, and he could use all sorts of special abilities. He is a master swordsman, for example, able to use one massive sword or two slightly thinner swords with utmost efficiency. He is incredibly fast. He is incredibly endurant. He is incredibly strong, able to break just about anything, including destroying a holy being or an entity of holiness with just his bare hands, if you saw Twilight Princess. As he continued his dominance over the world, Ganon would use his magic and abilities to just put everyone under his heel. But he never stopped trying to get the Triforce because he knew he wouldn't be totally successful until he had that. Thus, he hunted Zelda and Link, our hero, to the ends of the earth and beyond, whenever timeline they were in. Now, Ganon is a fierce opponent. He can take on whole armies by himself. He can actually create shadow clones of himself, going back to Naruto. Technically called phantoms, but whatever. You know what it is. He can resurrect ancient beings like Valavaga, the massive fire dragon. He can curse beings to die, like the Deku tree. He can command monsters, possess people, on and on and on. His powers are just insanely good. And it takes an incredible being to defeat him, to the point that the Master Sword was created solely to kill him. It is literally known as Evil's Bane, and because he is the descendant or embodiment of evil via demise, the sword can kill him as long as it gets him within range. And thus, Ganon has tried to kill Link and Zelda to make sure that that doesn't happen. But of course, it does happen almost every single Zelda game. So because of that, he has to keep reincarnating every lifetime or so that he can keep trying again, from a Skyward Sword all the way to the Breath of the Wild, where he was imprisoned for so long, he actually came back as a full-fledged monster via Calamity Ganon. And we all know what happened there. But Ganon has two different forms. He has Ganondorf, which is what we call his human form, his Gerudo form. But then, via the Triforce of Power and his demonic heritage, he has Ganon form, which is where he transforms into a giant pig, is able to hurl even much more powerful forms of dark magic, has a dark trident as well as swords, and he can be as tall as a building at times, or he can be a four-legged pig that likes to ram you via demonic portals. Twilight Princess. So, needless to say, Ganon is pretty dang tough, and there's a reason he's one of the most famous and beloved, I dare I say, villains in video game history, because he just keeps coming back. In fact, in Breath of the Wild, we never saw Ganondorf form, we only saw Calamity Ganon / Ganon form, which actually ticked off a lot of people because Ganondorf is pretty cool to look at times, and he can be very evil, he can be a boss, and he just doesn't want to die. It's crazy. All the links he'll go to in order to, not die. So now his only weakness is twofold. One, he is incredibly arrogant. He once let Link live because he thought he wasn't a threat to him, and if you remember Ocarina of Time, and he'll think that he has a situation completely in hand, and then he'll get surprised and just laugh like he did in Wind Waker when the king used the Triforce before Ganon could, because Ganon wasn't paying attention. So when Ganondorf thinks that an opponent is beneath him, he's totally going to underestimate him. And then the other weakness, of course, is holy weapons. He can only be killed by a holy weapon, even though he can resist them at times, like what we saw in Twilight Princess. But still, he can be killed by them. In fact, the piercing wound that he got in Twilight Princess was actually a weakness that you would exploit in his Ganon form. So whether it's the Master Sword at full power or the silver arrows that Zelda likes to use, he can be defeated by holy weapons and he can be killed. He'll always come back. That's just part of his curse, but it sometimes takes a long time or a lot of random events to happen for it to do so. He can be sealed away like he was in Twilight Princess for Breath of the Wild for 100 years. In Twilight Princess, he was sealed away in the Twilight Realm. It was basically a demon cloud that was used to possess Zant, basically. He's been sealed away by other forces throughout the games. It's a very complicated thing, but it takes that much to put him down. So you don't mess with Ganon. Alright, moving on to Dracula. To be clear, this is Dracula from Castlevania, obviously, and this is not the Dracula you were, thinking of when I said the name, no doubt, in terms of his backstory. Now, there's technically two different backstories to Dracula, but we're going to do the one that Death Battle is choosing, which is the Matthias Kronqvist storyline. So I read up all about that one. Get ready for a doozy. Oh boy. Alright, so Matthias Kronqvist was at one point in time a holy knight. Yes, very ironic. And with his friend Leon Belmont, keep that name in mind, they created a company of holy knights that would go through the land and do the bidding of the Holy Church and obviously God, kind of like the Crusades. But while Matthias was on a certain crusade, his wife, Elizabeth, died of an illness. Now, loss of a loved one is always bad, but for Matthias, he took it really hard, all right? And by hard, I mean he decided to curse God. Now, in the Castlevania universe, God isn't just God, all right? God is the embodiment of order, and then there is an opposite to God known as chaos, all right? It's very much the balance kind of thing. So Matthias cursed God because he let Elizabeth die of an illness while he was away and fighting in his name. So, to get back at God, he decided to become an entity of chaos himself. But could he do that? Well, there was a multiple part plan, as you saw in the recent preview of Death Battle, no doubt. One of it was getting the Crimson Stone, which is one of the most important vampire treasures in the history of Castlevania. There are two: the Crimson Stone and the Ebony Stone. You won't have to worry about the Ebony Stone though. So the Crimson Stone would allow Matthias to get what he needed, but he needed a few things first. First and foremost, he needed Death. Death was actually tied to the Crimson Stone, so by possessing it, Death swore allegiance to Matthias. That's a good first step. Second, he needed an actual vampire to siphon power from. Enter Walter, who was the most powerful vampire in the world at the time. But he knew that Walter wouldn't just give him his power, so he had to trick him. So he had Walter, follow this is going to get complicated. He had Walter take the fiancée of Leon Belmont. Her name was Sarah. Walter was kind of a sadist, but also a competition kind of guy. He wanted to challenge the best humans in the world and see if they could beat his challenges. So Matthias told Walter that Leon was the best human in the world in terms of competition, and if he took Sarah, his fiancée, he would be able to give him the challenge that he wanted. Sure enough, Walter agreed, took Sarah. She died, unfortunately, and Leon was able to defeat Walter and nearly kill him. But just before Walter could die, enter Matthias, and he imprisoned the soul of Walter via death into the Crimson Stone. And because of this, he became a vampire himself and immortal. Oops. So yeah, but that's not how he became Dracula. No, that was only one of the major turning points. Okay, with his immortal ability now, because he could live forever, he decided to basically turn against humanity and try to get revenge on it. But he still wasn't evil per se. He just wanted to live forever as a spite to God and to get revenge for what happened to Elizabeth. Leon Belmont, however, cursed his friend Matthias for what had happened, especially since Sarah died because of his act, and would not side with him. Fast forward about 400 years, Dracula finds another girl named Lisa, and they fall in love, and they have a son who you might know named Alucard. So, with his wife and his son, Matthias was actually very, very happy until the humans, who remember Matthias already hated, decided that his wife Lisa and her medicine that she was performing was actually witchcraft. And much like the Salem witch trials, they decided to execute her and do it when Dracula wasn't watching, when Matthias wasn't watching, so that they could get away with it. Oh, they got away with it. And they didn't get away with it. Because the moment that Matthias found out what happened to him, he swore vengeance on all of humankind. And he named himself Dracula Vanis Tapes or something like that. And decided, I am going to kill all of you. And thus started the very long and very arduous journey of both Dracula and the people who tried to stop him. Because Dracula was actually very successful in his endeavors to try and kill the human race, including wiping out whole armies of the church and those who stood up to him. He basically conquered Europe all on his own. And this was because not only of his immortality, not only of his incredible power, but he was able to summon and control beasts and monsters to the extent that he had whole armies at his beck and call. His only weakness was the descendants of his old friend Leon Belmont, because the Belmont clan, through their own unique story, which I won't go into, had a weapon called the Vampire Killer. Very on the nose. But this holy weapon was able to both defeat and kill Dracula in various ways in numerous games over the years. Now, how is it that he can kill over and over again? Well, just like Ganondorf / Ganon, Dracula had let's call it a contingency plan. Because the spirit of Walter was still within the Crimson Stone and Dracula controlled the Crimson Stone, he had the ability to basically resurrect every 100 years. Or indeterminate times, depending on the people of the world. Because, see, Dracula being an agent of chaos again being the god of Chaos being the god of chaos slash embodiment of evil, think demise, but in Castlevania. Um, it Dracula's power is fueled by the negative feelings and beliefs of man. Okay, so every 100 years or so, or in certain time periods, if humanity's thoughts go truly evil, truly dark, he can resurrect via their emotions and willpower. And that's why while certain resurrections happened every 100 years like clockwork, there were other times where his followers were able to, let's just say, cut the rules or shortcut the rules and resurrect him. So, like sometimes he even resurrected less than 5 years after his previous death, though usually it was in incomplete form or something like that. Including a period between he was resurrected during World War One and World War II because of the negative emotions of humanity. And this actually amused Dracula because he felt, I can't die because humanity is always going to suck, pun intended. So, but unfortunately for him, both the Belmont line and various other orders, including the Order of Ecclesia, rose up to make sure that every time that Dracula got back up and brought back his castle, Castlevania, he would always get put down, whether it be by the vampire killer, being sealed away via certain glyphs and ruins, or whatever. He would eventually be defeated until eventually, finally, he was put down for good until he wasn't. And you know, there's going to be another Castlevania game eventually. So, yeah. Now, in terms of power, Dracula is a lot like you would expect, but he's even more. You see, before he was Dracula again, he was Matthias, and Matthias's family was masters of alchemy. All right, and because of that, they were master magicians. And so Matthias, because of his family, naturally has a lot of inherent sorcery knowledge, which was only enhanced by the Crimson Stone and various other things of just being a vampire. So he can cast fire, he can shoot beams of energy, he can drain the souls of his victims. He can drain blood and like literally rain. He can make it rain blood and hurt them, which is really freaky when you think about it. So he can fly. He can teleport. He can summon massive beasts, including the creatures of the night, like bats and wolves. He can summon demons and demonic armies, like I mentioned earlier. He can actually turn into bats, like a swarm of bats, and like fly at his enemies. And when all else fails, he has his demon forms, which he can use on his own as a last resort to try and overpower the Belmonts or whoever is facing him at the time, including one demonic form where he actually fuses with death itself and, you know, gets even more powerful. And that's just tapping the surface of all of his abilities. He got a lot, but some of them have really weird names, so I'm not going to say them all. Not unlike Ganon, his weaknesses, though, are A, his arrogance. He knows he can come back, so he doesn't fear enemies. And sometimes he doesn't exactly take his opponent seriously because, hey, I'm Dracula. Yeah. Want to go for a bite? I'm kidding. So yeah, he's a bit arrogant himself, but when he does decide to bring it, he really brings it, and he has his dire outlook on humanity and everything makes him a very terrible opponent in terms of power and such like that. So yeah, he's really boss. There's a reason Dracula's been around forever. There's a reason why he's basically the end game boss of every Castlevania game except for one or two, and so you do not want to mess with Dracula when his castle rises in the night. All right, so who wins between Ganon and Dracula? So for the longest time, including during my research, I honestly thought that this could be a stalemate situation, which would be a first for Death Battle, obviously, because it's specifically stated that both Ganon and Dracula cannot be killed by holy weapons. All right? And obviously, since we're going to be taking the best form of Dracula and the best form of Ganon, ignore the 3D models, but you know what I mean, the composite forms like they usually do. In regards to the main timeline, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So since we're doing those combinations, you know that Dracula's going to be in like peak power. So let's just say that his first true transformation after Lysa died, and then Ganon's going to be Ganon because Ganon's always Ganon. So because of that, they're at peak power. They can only be killed by holy weapons, right? So Ganon does not have a holy weapon. It's literally not his thing. And since Dracula is literally the embodiment of evil from his universe, he doesn't have a holy weapon either. And I made sure to look at it. They do not have holy techniques. They can't cast light curses or whatever. They can just, do their thing. So, doesn't that mean that they can't kill each other? Well, this is actually the thing I thought about with Bowser and Ganon. I forgot about the holy weapon shtick. So, I'm not making that mistake again. So, I looked deep into the lore, and there are times in Castlevania history where Dracula has a couple of weaknesses that Ganon can exploit. Number one, Ganon does not have when Ganondorf transforms into Ganon, it is not inhibited with any weaknesses. If anything, it's a strength boost, right? When Dracula transforms into his various final forms, whether it be fused with death or something like that, he actually gets weaknesses. It's specifically stated in certain games that Dracula has a weakness to headshots, even if you don't have a holy weapon. All right. And then when he transforms into certain demon forms, including his true demon form, it's stated that his invulnerability goes away. So there's no doubt that Dracula is going to transform into his final form. It's just the natural thing. And then Ganondorf will transform into Ganon. And when that happens, I'm guessing that all you really need to do is get a headshot in, and Dracula will die. I know, right? Now, wait, you might be thinking, what about magic? Well, remember, Ganondorf is a master of magic too. He learned from the Twin Rover Witches, and he has unlimited magical energy because of the Triforce of Power. While Dracula has a lot of magical power, his is not infinite. It's stated that sometimes he even needs to charge his attacks so that he can, do what he needs to do. Both of them have magical armies that they can summon between the creatures of the night and Ganon's shadow army. They're both incredibly powerful. They're both incredibly endurant. But to my knowledge, Dracula does not have a way to kill Ganon via holy weapons. And again, it's the Master Sword, the Silver Arrows, or something similar to that cannot be used. Or sorry, weapons of that caliber have to be used to kill Ganon. If you don't believe me, look at the various times that other beings have gone up against Ganon and lost, including my dear Midna in Twilight Princess, who had the Forbidden Shadow, one of the most powerful dark arts in the world, and it couldn't even touch him. He crushed that thing like it was nothing because he's freaking Ganondorf. All right. So while I know this battle is going to be freaking gorgeous to look at, and I look forward to seeing their 3D forms, I have to think that based on what I'm seeing and based on what I read about Dracula's super forms, Ganon will get that opportunity to kill him, whether it be via the magic that he has or just his raw power. And if Dracula really is vulnerable to serious damage while in his super forms, that makes him weak, and that makes him able to be killed even without a holy weapon. So, because of this, I am picking Ganondorf to win this death battle. And with that, I am ending this episode of Todd Talk. Who do you think is going to win between Ganondorf and Dracula in the upcoming death battle, and how excited are you to see it? Let me know in the comments below. So, I thank you for watching. If you made this far, I know you were listening, and I will see you around.